Hey, welcome back. Today is February the 17th, 2021. It is approximately 1:30 p.m. Today we're doing something a little bit different than what we've done in the past. I'm here at the Sheriff's Office in Jefferson County, here to speak with Jeff Coffey. Now, I spoke with him previously and told him that I wanted to do an interview in regards to his jail facility and the Justice Center to do a comparison between what Hamblen County wants and what they have here at this facility. So let's go on in there, see if we can talk to him. And he just told me come today after 1. I've got a list of questions to ask him that all pertain to the Justice Center and the jail. How you doing? And there he is. I'm sure he probably seen me through the video recording. How you doing, Sheriff?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good. All right. Much nicer day out today than it's been all weekend.
Tomorrow looks like it's going to be kind of interesting, or tonight anyway.
I haven't even caught any of that.
But it's going to see weather. Just stick around, it'll change.
That's for sure.
It's about like East Tennessee has to be one of the hardest places in the world to predict the weather.
I agree. And Florida's just the opposite. You know it's going to rain down there.
I just have to see right there. Let me grab some of that information.
All right. Hey, make sure that you all give this a thumbs up, subscribe.
All right.
Hey, I definitely appreciate this opportunity, Sheriff.
No problem.
I'm gonna go ahead and pause these real quick so that you and I could just talk real fast. All right, so we're back. Sheriff, could you please introduce yourself?
Jeff Coffey, Sheriff, Jefferson County.
All right, and how long have you been Sheriff of Jefferson County?
I came in September of 2018.
Okay, so a couple of years.
Yes.
All right. What is your prior law enforcement history?
I started my career years ago in Granger County. As a deputy, or as a jailer and a deputy and a dispatcher. You kind of done all three things. And I went after that, got my paramedic license. I've been a paramedic for almost 30 years now. I've maintained that license, worked at Jefferson County, worked at Morristown EMS for a while full time. Then I went to work for Jefferson City Police Department, worked there approximately 10 years. Was patrol supervisor when I left there and went to the Highway Patrol. Spent 13 years at the Highway Patrol. For 11 of those years, I was a bomb dog handler. I had the only explosive canine for like an 18-county region.
Okay.
So, that experience, I've been all over the state of Tennessee on special events, doing bomb sweeps, on bomb calls. It was just a great experience doing that. And then I ran for sheriff in 2018 and was elected.
Okay. Awesome. It sounds like you've been around and you know different aspects of it. And we appreciate you, being part of the emergency as far as your paramedic and stuff like that. That's awesome. And I did hear that about you the other day. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this facility, the Justice Center and the jail. What year were they built?
2007, the Justice Center.
2007. So we're talking about 13 years ago.
Yes.
Okay. And was it built completely at that time, or was there anything left unfinished?
No, it was built turnkey at that time for the amount. There is, they did at that time, there's an area at the back of it where you can see where expansion, where the ground prep's already done. If they done expansion, of course, they'd have to come in and, do, I guess, footers and all that, but the land's cleared. But there is a section, I think, for another, probably a whole pod to go back there for expansion.
Okay.
But for what the county got, everything was turnkey and done, ready.
Okay. With enough land for expansion in the future.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So how many courtrooms are in the Justice Center?
You have 3 courtrooms. You have the juvenile courtroom, and you have one courtroom that's designated for Sessions Court, and another one for a circuit court. So you have 3 different courtrooms.
Okay, and the access from the jail to the courtrooms for the inmates, is that pretty secure? They don't intermingle at all with any kind of the public?
Oh, no. I can, later on, I can show you that walkway. It's completely enclosed.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to go in there and show you how the prisoners are taken up and actually how they're maintained up into the courtroom.
We would love that. Anything that you can show us, we would definitely be happy to do. We might even have that on a part 2, just so you all know. So if you don't see that in this role, we might go to part 2 on that. Okay, so how many deputies are employed just for the security of the Justice Center portion of it?
The Justice Center, I think it's 46 that's there. There's about 8 to 9 a shift. Now we have 2 facilities that we run. Okay. The up here we have 88 beds. That's split up between female and male. Yes, that's correct. And then we have 46 beds at our workhouse. It's down here below. Our workhouse is strictly for those people that are working at our landfills, county garages. We have a work program where we're introducing people back into society. Nice. That they do at a factory here in town, where they actually take they gain a salary. Their salary goes to paying their fines off, paying child support, and then they actually get to set some of that money aside. So, we have 12 people currently in that program. We had inmates that was able to, at Christmas, release some of that money back home to supply money for their families and their children for Christmas. So, and we had our first graduate from that last week. But the great thing about it is, once they get out of here, they've got some money in their pocket. They're just not getting out, on the street. They get to maintain their job and keep their job at this factory. So they're able to maybe buy them some transportation or, find a place to rent or whatever. But they're just not walking out the door, with nothing. So it's rehabilitation. Yeah, so it's rehabilitation. We're pretty excited about it. Maybe in the future we can expand that. But, I realized one thing. And we've got some other programs that we're getting ready to start here. But, a lot of them, when I campaigned, a lot of my, I guess my focus was on drugs. And that comes from some of the things that I experienced inside my family alone. And I knew that we had to not only, we've been aggressively gone after drug dealers. I created a street crimes unit, which that's all they focus on. When you call me and say, you know what, my neighbor down here, there's cars in and out all hours of the night, my street crimes unit's going to be, that's going to be their focus. What's going on in that house? We've been very successful with it. I've yet to get the numbers for 2020, but in 2018, we arrested approximately 100 drug dealers in this county.
Wow.
And some of them federally. We was able to take them with federal. And, well, more than half we charge federally. And because the guys that on my narcotics unit are also attached to a task force, so a federal task force, so they're able to do that. But one thing I did realize is a lot of these drug dealers that we brought in, they're actually dealing to supply their own habit. That's only why they can't afford it on their own. But if they can sell it, they can skim off the top. They can satisfy, their addiction by it. And, one of the things I realized when we brought them in here, we got to try to help those people and try to set them on a path of recovery, because if we don't, once they go back outside,
it's a revolving door.
It's a revolving door. They're going to start doing it. And if they want their drugs, they're going to say, well, I can start dealing again and I can skim off the top and I don't have to do anything except lay here, make a little money for this, and I get my own dope. So that's one of the things that, we concentrate on as far as on this side. And we've got some other new programs we're hoping to be starting, hopefully within the next, month or so, with the judge, that I'm not really in a position to release yet, but it's something that, possibly be the only place in the state of Tennessee that's doing this. So we're kind of excited about that, but trying to stop that cycle of coming to jail, spending, 6 or 8 months, a year and a half, and then going back out without anybody trying to help you. Now, the last year's been very, very, I guess you could say, difficult because of COVID.
Yeah,
because
sure.
We pride ourselves on the correctional officers that are here, and I would put them up against anybody in the state. We had, I think, reported 9 cases of COVID in this jail during the entire time. That's it.
That's not bad.
Some jails were reporting 30, 40, 50, 60. We've had 9 because we started before we started having staff meetings in this very room 3 weeks before we got our first case of COVID in this county. And I said, listen, with my background in emergency medicine as a paramedic, a lot of it was with weapons of mass destruction, the plague, and all that. I took some training in that. And I said, I got to know, we've got to prepare ourselves. So we started doing temperature checks on the inmates before we even had a case of this in the county, and a questionnaire. When they came in, we didn't allow anybody, none of our jailers, once you come to the Sally Port, the deputy did, or officer, highway patrol, whoever, they scanned their temperature and documented, asked them the questionnaire where they had been when they first started, and then we could put them into a holding cell. And then if they did have a temperature, then we would summons a nurse, and before they left that cell, they would have to be, cleared by the nurse. And so that was real effective. We had, and it went as far as even the cleaning agents. We had a system where we could spray the whole thing down with cleaning agents, and within, air dry, and within 5 minutes, everything in there would be dead. It would kill it. So we put all these in place, and I'm just so proud of our staff. We got hit harder with employees catching it, because I had 8 correctional officers at one time out at the same time with COVID.
Wow. And
a lot of it was all off-site, catching it with family members and so forth, but I'm just really proud of them and what they do, and we still maintain that today. They come in, do the same thing, do temperature checks, and sometimes we have to take all the precautions, and sometimes it's not, because one thing we did, research, and I asked a doctor his opinion, but I know that methamphetamine creates body temperature rise. Okay. So once you take methamphetamine, within the first couple of hours, your body temp can get up to 101.5, 106.
Wow.
Within the first couple of hours, and then it gradually comes down. Because it does the dopamine release and all that's how it affects, and that's what they get the high from. So, you know, a lot of times we'll get people, what's their charge? Methamphetamine, their temps, 100.8. We're still going to take the same precautions. Nurse is going to look at them, and they're not going to leave that area until the nurse looks at them and clears them, because what we find out, once they do that, then we start taking the temperatures ever so often to see, and then you'll gradually start to see it go down.
It starts to drop.
And then from that point it stays, and the nurse will evaluate them. So, I mean, it's been a challenging year for that aspect, and also for all the programs that we had, all the, you know, we had a lot of churches that come in and offered programs and classes, and, you know, we had to stop because it was just too big of a risk of them coming in. Because COVID was such just a strange animal.
Yeah, still is.
Yeah, you know, and you know, that's, you know, when I got diagnosed with it the week after Thanksgiving, and I was, you know, it's just one of those things. I was at an event, nobody there was sick on a Sunday, and then on Tuesday we got the phone call and said, hey, somebody's come down with it. And then there was quite a few of us that ended up with it. And I mean, it was, you know, my entire family ended up with it then, because, you know, we was all there. But, you know, it was just, it's just strange. And, but it's went through our department, and, you know, we put a lot of things in place for our deputies. We stopped roll call. You know, we started doing mask mandates when we got this second surge, especially because, you know, that was it. And, you know, I just told them, I said, just stay separated. And there for about 2 months, I mean, I came in and done administrative stuff I needed, but I got out in the car and patrolled around just to stay away from everybody. If somebody came in and they really wanted to see me, I could meet with them here, or I'd drive to their home, you know, to meet them and talk to them. But, you know, but I'm proud of our patrol team and all that for the steps that they took, because, I mean, it could have got, you know, a lot worse. And, but, you know, we had some, you know, some pretty sick people, you know, with COVID. And, you know, it was, I was hospitalized when I had it. So, I mean, it was just, for a couple of days. So, I mean, it's just strange. But, I'm really proud of the men and women that work here. And, also the corrections and on the road during this COVID. I would think if someone looked at us and come in and would grade us, I think we would score pretty high. Awesome. But it is because of you know, their dedication
and precautionary steps at the beginning.
Yes,
for sure. Yeah, because that's a low number for a facility.
Yeah, because you know, we got our first case in the county on a Friday afternoon. The health department called me and said, we've got our first case in the county. And you know, we had it before. Anderson, Blount County didn't have a case then. It was Knox County and us and somebody else. I don't even know if Hamblen County had a case yet, but we had our first one. And, you know, they were trying to do the contact tracing and all that. And then, you know, but at that point it was the second surge where we really started skyrocketing. You know, when it started coming back around in the falls, when we started skyrocketing, and that's where we would have, you know, we were up to like 600 or 700 cases, and we were getting 100 new cases a day. And, you know, we were having a lot of people sick and so forth, and that's when it really hit us, as far as that on the second surge. But you know, it is what it is, and I mean, we're still going to have this. You know, they're doing the vaccines now, and we're hoping, you know, there's a lot of success with that. And you know, I think there will be. It's going to protect some people, and you know, if not all. So I mean, you know, I think the biggest worry is what anybody knows is, if you've got the vaccine, can you still be a carrier? I don't know if that question's really been answered yet, you know?
I don't think it has been 100%.
You know, because if I get vaccinated and I come across it, can I still carry it and walk in here and carry it to other people? So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But I think what we're seeing now, the drop is just really, as far as I'm concerned, I'm really, really satisfied with the drop that we're seeing now. Because, you know, we had one day last week, we just had 7 new cases in the county. We hadn't seen that since the first stages of it. And I was like, wow. Yeah,
I think Tennessee finally hit a week ago their lowest in months and months. So, yeah, it's starting to drop. I don't know if it's because a lot of people have already been succumbed to it. Maybe they were sick, maybe they weren't, so that lessens the amount of people. But yeah, going out, all you have to do is touch something that somebody else touched and then touch your face, right? So, I mean, you can take precautions, but nothing's 100%, nor have I seen anything happen 100% since this has happened, right? There's always been some kind of a flaw in the whole process of it. But, all right, so how many... You said that there was 88 inmates here and 26 and 46. So that's like roughly 130 inmates total?
Yeah, 136, 138, somewhere in there. Or 200.
200?
Yeah, 200.
Okay. So you got about 236 beds available, which is about equivalent to what Hamblen County is currently. How many stories is your jail?
Well, it's a single story, but I mean, once you go in, you do have an upper deck that's reached from the inside. You do have a stairwell up that goes up. So the cells are kind of stacked on top of each other. But I mean, we wouldn't really consider it a second story, but you do have an upper pod.
Like a loft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up there.
Okay. So is there only two cells or sections that are on that floor? You said one was for women, one was for men. So how's that split up?
Oh, they're totally separated. The female section, when you come up to it, you have a minimum and maximum. The minimum, you have the main pod where the correctional officer is that has view of both sections that maintains that room. You have a minimum side that's usually the workers, the women that are assigned to laundry duty and the ones that work in the kitchen and so forth. They're usually, and then there's others that's in there as well, but they're the minimum side. Then you have the maximum side. They're the ones that are state prisoners, the ones that are waiting for court, that may have a violent background, or certain criteria that we have that we classify that we put them in maximum. And then we have two solitary cells that's in the front of that can be viewed that you can put in there. That's separated. Then you go on down, and then you go into the male side.
Okay.
And once you go through these double doors, you go into the male side, and once you go into the male side, there's which medical is all in that side. Once you go into there, you have, we call it E block. It's a classification block. It's just like open cells with like bunk beds in it. When you first come in, you're going in there till you be classified. The state gives us certain criteria where you can put certain inmates, depending on their charge. We have A, B, C, and D block. And depending on what your charge is, you'll be assigned to one of those different charges, or one of those different cell blocks.
Okay, so there's 4 different cell blocks, A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Can they all be seen by one control room, or is there multiple control rooms?
No, there's one control room in the center.
In the center, so it's like a wagon wheel.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, they're all offset. They can get up and access any one of those and look into them, but there's not just a clear view. Of course, they've got all the cameras set up in there too, where they can sit there and view all the cameras and so forth. And then we've got the catwalk that goes all around the top of it that we can make access. We can enter and make access to. The exercise yards are off of them. They share the exercise yard, which is you can't really see them from here because they're just big old block walls. There's no way of scaling them or anything like that. So, but they're only allowed to do that. Block B block will have the exercise yard at this time, and then B block will have it at a certain other time. So, but we do 23-in-1, where they're locked up 23 hours a day. If they get out for an hour, they're allowed to use the phone, shower, and so forth. And then they get locked back up. And then you only do so many cells at a time. That kind of controls the environment in there. I couldn't imagine. I visited a jail not too long ago where they had, like 80 people out at the same time, and they're sitting up there trying to watch all the activity that's going on up there. And but and still, even what we done, we still had at different times, you have assaults in your jail, and it becomes demanding. And when you get somebody that's sent to the hospital, then you got to move staff there, and I mean and that's what you're trying to prevent. You're trying to prevent the assaults and that happen. And we've been there for a while. We had some hiccups with it, but we've kind of got that straightened out. It's it's been a while since we had an assault where someone's had to been taken to the hospital or hospitalized over, and a lot of that's trial and error. You look at it and say, hey, what's this going to work? And if it ain't going to work, let's try to do something different. So our staff sits down and constantly works on that, tries to come up with different ways to try to prevent those things from happening. So, like I said, there's we hope 188, or we hope 236. I mean, our population today, this in both places, is 162. So, I mean, we're well under the population of what, we need to have. Because one reason is state prisoners. We've sent 15, in 2021, we've sent 15 state prisoners to the TDOC to prison, and I think 3 females to prison. Only since already in
a month and a half,
we've already sent that many, because one of the things that the state pays us $39 a day reimbursement for them, and one of the last things and it's something that when you sent me that, I said, we really got to relook at that. But I mean, it was 2 or 3 years ago, it was costing us $41 a day to house them. So it's actually $3 more than what the state was paying. So, and that was one of the decisions I come up and I said, we need to, when we got bed space, we need to ship them on, because we're not making anything. I mean,
right.
I don't want to make it a money-making venture anyway, because I mean, that it's a point of punishment if they go to the prison system. And I mean, it's obviously they have more capabilities of putting people where they need to, and programs and all that. But I mean, just to get them out of here. But we're at 162 today, and some of our averages, like in 2019, we averaged 211 a day.
Okay, so still under your average. What was the max at that time?
The max, 2019, there was some days that we were right at 300.
Okay.
There was some certain times of the year we were at 300. A lot of those will be after circuit court dates. When you have grand jury, I mean, you had one grand jury where you had Jefferson City had 40 drug indictments, and then I think we had 15 or 20. So that's going to, of course, they're coming in here. A lot of those is they don't get a bond until they go before circuit court, and they may be here a couple of weeks. You have those certain times where we get up to right at 300, and there's been some times prior to my administration that they've told me that's been up to like 310 and so forth like that. But I mean, with COVID, I mean, our lowest point from COVID, we got down like to 130.
Okay.
And since COVID, because I mean, crime reduced. I mean, it's obviously, there's a lot of things that some crimes have elevated, some crimes reduced, but I mean, then alternative methods started being used, a lot of GPS monitoring for people, just to try to keep them out. Because that was my biggest concern about the jail is I mean, it's just a proven fact. We've got a lot of people here that have been using illegal narcotics and drugs for many years, and they're not well. They're not well mentally, and they sure ain't well physically, and they've got a lot of medical problems, and it's an expense to the county.
Sure.
To do that. I mean, when you have, take for instance, when we started the 13, we had one guy that was costing us $600 a month in medical alone, just medication. that we had to pay for. Then there was another one that was $100 a week, and since they were state prisoners, I mean, well, we sent them on down to the state because I mean that's an expense.
Yeah.
That we have to take care of their physical and mental needs, and we have a behavioral health nurse that's on staff now that's able to talk to these people and meet with them, and it's been a great asset since we've been able to bring them on because that's where we're trending now. It's the mental health part. We've had all these people that's used, and now it's the mental health factor. They've got some mental health problems now because they did use drugs, and I mean that we see that. We talked to Phil Rowe, Congressman Phil Rowe had a big meeting in Water State with all law enforcement professionals, and that was the biggest key. Mental health. We're seeing a bunch of mental health right now, and I think we're lacking because a lot of things. We do transports. Oh Lord, we can do 2 or 3 a day from our local hospital to different areas from here, and about the closest place we'll go is Chattanooga.
Okay. But
I mean, we take people to Memphis. It's just whoever can hold them at that time, but I mean that's the challenge for corrections, jail, and for deputies now. I see is mental health. We deal with a lot of mental health calls that people are struggling, they're having issues, and I mean it's caused some damage to them. They're using these drugs all these years, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we see that I've seen an increase in that just really worries me is the mental health aspect of it, and what we know that the drugs have took a lot of people. We've lost several people by overdose already in this county already in 2021, but the mental health issues are they just keep building up. And that's some of the things that, the other people, they're off drugs, but they got some other issues going on too. And I mean, it's really unfortunate, but I mean, that's one of the things that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's kind of hard because yes, drugs are addictive, but I don't think it's all necessarily the addiction to the drug as much as it is the act of doing the drug. Because you can have people in a rehab, and if all the time is on their mind, I can't wait to get out of here for that next hit. Doesn't matter what they're seeing. Doesn't matter what's in front of them. If they are associated with the same people, the same areas that they were associated in before, I feel it's a lot harder. So programs that you offer, would be definitely beneficial in the long run, as far as being able to have other things to do and not when they're bored, to not help them relapse, and to have somebody to continue to ongoing and talking with. And I think you're definitely on the right page. You're heading in the right direction. So what are the main things that your deputies are arresting people for out there?
I know, of course, I mean, DUIs, drug arrest, I mean, they're always there and steady. I think the only thing that we've seen an increase in, and I think a lot of it was COVID, from the figures I've looked from last year, was domestics. And that's understandable.
Yep.
Because a lot of people, they stayed at home. We had a pretty sharp, in talking with the other agencies, other sheriffs, police chiefs, it's the same thing. They've seen a lot of an increase in domestic assaults, which puts your assaults, your violent crimes, puts the boost in them, and even on the juvenile side too. I mean, we've seen a pretty sharp spike in juvenile violence too, but a lot of it has to do with domestic related situations at home, where they've been involved, in a family setting. So I don't know if it's the biggest one we arrest. Well, we're kind of average, there's not, but I mean, as far as, if I seen one that I said that was probably that was on the increase, was that. Now we're starting to see a downgrade in that now because people are starting to get a little bit active. But for the last year, I would say, yeah, I think it's 43% increase.
Wow.
In those types of calls and arrests. So, and of course that would make that, and it's kind of hard to put a finger on it too, because then, in the last year we, like a lot of agencies, we've done a lot of patrolling areas, but as far as being really proactive, as far as DUIs, yes, but some of the areas you're just the least amount of contact you can have your deputies with people, then because we went to a lot of calls. If they could be handled over the phone, we'd handle over the call, over the phone. But if an investigation needed to be started and deputies need to go in and document and take photographs, then we went ahead and done that. So, yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest uptick that we saw.
Domestic violence.
And COVID would be the main reason for that, because, a lot of people just, I talk to people right now that still don't want to leave home, that they just don't have any desire of being out in the public.
No.
So, I mean, it's changed a lot of people, but, yeah, I would say that would be it for us in the last year.
As far as drug use, what's the most, I guess, popular drug of choice?
Here it kind of fluctuates. I mean, it's our narcotics guys. I mean, they're staying real busy. Last year, back in 2019, probably the end of 2019, we saw an uptick in heroin. I mean, we're seeing a lot of heroin, more heroin than we were methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is still here at a certain level. It didn't drop off any, but we just saw. We arrested 2 key heroin dealers that were in our county, and it kind of dropped off. And meth took a big surge because, and one of the things is, I mean, it's just plentiful, the methamphetamine, and it started coming in, and a lot of it too was, if you're using heroin, when you come off and you have to detox off heroin, there's a sickness to it. That's what they consider being dope sick, and those people become very sick for about 7 to 10 days. I mean, it's, they come in here and they suffer from it. We've, one of the, a doctor had, just actually the staff meeting this morning had commented and said that we may have the best detox program in the state that he saw so far. But, these people come in, they're nauseated, they're just throwing up, and this goes on. But we've got a detox problem where we try to detox them, and then that's part of our thing of trying to get them help and getting them, back on the road to recovery and in that. But as far as doing the detox program, but one of the things is if you don't get meth, it's a different. If you don't get your heroin, you start becoming that dope sick. Your body starts rebelling and saying, I need it. And I think one of the selling points we had over last summer we knew that we had, operatives that were sitting there going, hey, man, you don't need that stuff. Try this meth. It'd take away your dope sick. And they come in dope sick and they take the meth and it disappears. And now they get hooked on the meth. So now they're using meth. So, but now, in the last, I debrief with my guys, try to once a week, every couple of weeks, depending on how busy they are, but they're seeing an insurgence of heroin to come back up. So I think it's just supply and demand. If they can't get their hands on something, they're going to get their hands on something else. But we're starting to see an uptick of, the increase of heroin in the area, and that. And I mean, the stats don't lie. I told you earlier I mentioned about some overdose deaths that, we've had already in 2021, and that's the main cause from them. I mean, it's the heroin that's mixed with the fentanyl. And I'm not saying that those were the cases, but I mean, that's what we're seeing a lot. I mean, if you see heroin, you better treat it as there's fentanyl inside of it.
Okay. In your experience, since you have the medical experience as well as the law enforcement experience, and you may not have any data on this, but out of the people that come into this facility for those types of drugs, How many of them originally started off with just a prescription from their doctor that eventually got out of control?
Out of control. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have that data or no. It.
10% more?
It may be. Well, it's not as prevalent as it is anymore. I mean, the at a certain time, we had the the difficulties with the pain clinics and the overprescribing. You had kind of I just considered the black market. You walked up, you throw them $300 and they throwed you enough and you went away. You don't hear that as much anymore that they have. Some of those people are left over from that era. They've still not gotten a position where they've come to recovery and have not helped from that. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't expect an answer that you don't know. Back to the jail. How many deputies are employed just for the jail staff itself?
There's about 46, 47. We have some transport officers in there as well. But, we have two that remain. We have two at the workhouse that stay. And the remaining, I think there's 7 up here. There's so many. They're assigned to different stations. You have the male block, female block. You have one that works totally just for the kitchen. That she manages the kitchen. They work. You have a supervisor. You have a sergeant or corporal on those shifts as well. And you have somebody that's in booking and the different areas of the jail. I mean, you may have some. Our medical has, I think it has 4 cells. You may have some, inmates that's assigned to the medical section that's, may have some kind of medical thing going on. Then we'll have to have one that, is assigned there to watch that and maintain that. But it's anywhere from, I think, about 9, 10 a shift. It just varies. 8 or 9 that you'll have on a shift. And with the inmate population that we have now, I mean, it's pretty well controlled. I mean, if you get up to, I think the highest number we've had since I've been sheriff is like 298. And when you get up to that point, then you've got, we've got 2-man cells. When you got 2-man cells, I mean, it makes it difficult. You add another cell and you add another bed to the floor, which they call it a boat. It looks like a boat, but it's able to keep them up off the floor, and then you put the mattress inside of it. Okay, is what they just refer to them as. But there's another name that they marketed them with, but everybody here just calls them a boat. But and then you might have 3 to a cell, but we don't have any of that, at this time. I mean, with 162, we just don't have that. But if it got over 236, then you'd start in that position where you'd have to use them.
At least you have them, though, and they're available. Are you fully staffed?
In the jail, I'll have to check. I know they were doing some hiring, and I don't know if their training's complete or not. But I know at one time we had 3 or 4 openings. Okay. Inside the correctional, and correctional is it's a tough job.
Oh, sure, because they're dealing with the people coming off the street that are...
These are not people that didn't... some of these people, honestly, the ones that come through and come into booking, you have people that go out and have poor judgment and do something, and they come in. And then you have some people that, this is a second home to them. I look at the booking sheets and I'm thinking, my gosh, how many times has this dude been in here since I've been? And it's always another violation of probation. And I'm like, come on, man, can you not go out and do something right? I've lived on this earth 52 years. I've never done anything that's going to have me put in jail. Why can't you just go out and do it for a little bit? You just get frustrated with with people. The staffing, it's just difficult. And I mean, everybody, once you become sheriff, I mean, the other sheriffs will tell you, and you take training required to become, once you become elected, before you even take office, you have to take a some training, 2 weeks of training in Nashville to become a new sheriff, because you have so many responsibilities as the sheriff. And the biggest one is the maintenance, the maintaining the jail. I maintain the jail. I make sure that the jail's running smoothly, that everything's done. But by statute, county commission, is over the jail, basically. They're, whatever needs happens, it falls back to county commission as well. So, because, they're the stakeholders, they're the money and so forth. And I have to take issues back to them as far as financially, to go back and say, hey, this is where, we're having, issues. And it just takes one. And a lot of them is, since I've been sheriff, has been medical issues. It really, it puts you in a position to where you've got them here, you've got to maintain them, and, you've got to give them good health. While they're here, you can't deny them. You find yourself sitting in a federal courtroom somewhere, and it probably ain't gonna be fun for you when it's over with. So but just being a human being, yeah, they've done something, but they're paying their debt to society.
Sure.
And so they're back there, they're paying for it, but we gotta maintain the health, and that's something that in the last couple of years it kind of struggles with is, I guess, the medical side of it, because it can get pretty expensive. And for medical, when we have insurance, and we go out here and we break a jaw, or we fall off and break an arm, we file the insurance. There's no insurance here when we go in. But the hospitals and doctors, they work with us as far as cutting rebates and so forth like that. They understand, but it still can get pretty expensive. We had a gentleman, the last year alone, his medical was $36,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. He comes in, but it goes back to what I was telling you about a lot of people that they've used these drugs. They burn their body up. They've got liver issues. They've got kidney issues, and that part of it's challenging. But you can just do what you can do, and for that. But you just give them the medical treatment that they need, and then you go on. Then you can go back to county commission and say, hey, we'll have to need some more funding in this category, because we're just seeing a lot. And last year when I spoke to him, I said, we just, unfortunately, we've got some healthy people, but we've got a lot of sick people in jail.
Sure. There's all walks of life.
And they beat their body up with drugs, and they're just sick, and they've got, and this ain't no play. They're sick, and it's unfortunate, it really is.
So the medical bills for the state prisoners, none of that can be billed back to the state?
There are certain instances where I think if they're hospitalized, I think we can get some of that back. But if something happens and they get placed in the hospital, I think we can call for reimbursement for that. But that's supposed to be within the $39 or whatever a day that you're given reimbursed for that. And the 39 is what they give you. We estimate it cost us 41, and that's just food and shelter.
And that's a recent estimate, the 41?
No, it's been a few years back. That's where we'll have to revisit that and see what it's actually costing us in today's value of that. And I was talking to my chief and captain, and I said, we need to revisit that. And I want to see what it is today, because I know it's probably more than that.
Yeah, and if you could get me that information, I'd appreciate that as well, because that's a big deal. If you're already losing money every day, it adds up, and it comes. Money that would have been allotted for something else is no longer there because of the daily loss of revenue. And hey, commercial people don't usually lose money, right? No. They're in business for money, and that's a big thing. I want to talk a little bit about the age requirement and the experience and testing procedures of new deputies.
Deputies out on the street or correctional officers, they're all state standards through post. I mean, for your age 21, you got to have a physical, you got to have a psychological. To do that, you got to complete the police academy somewhere. To do that, it's with an 8-10 week program. And once you come after that here, you got an FTO program that you have to go by. Then after every year, you've got to do 40. I think they've changed that, maybe increased it, but you got to do 40 hours of in-service training. Some of it's mandatory. Some of it, the training that we do every year is required training the state has put on, because they actually added some this year through some of the police reforms that we've got to add. But you had certain ones that are required. I forget how many hours. I think it's 16 hours maybe that you've got to show. Then after that, you can kind of use different topics. We try to every other year since I've came in. We didn't do it last year because we done in service by remote on computer-based programs is how we handled it. The only time we was together as a group was at the firing range, and we was able to distance ourselves and not be in the same classroom, but we were able to do it by a mobile training program that they all done on their own time and turned in. But you have to do 40 of that every year, and then whatever you do on top of that's just extra. But I mean, you have to do those 40, and then you have to show the mandatory. Some of it's mental health training, some of it's child sex abuse training. You have to show all that stuff that is mandatory by the state. Driving, there's 2 hours of driving, but every other year. Last year we didn't do it obviously, but this year we'll go back to the Water State driving track up there. We done it 2 years ago, and we'll put them out there on the driving track, and all of our deputies will complete training up there on the driving track. So we actually not only sitting in a classroom telling them, don't speed, don't do this, but they actually get up there and get to drive courses and so forth, and we get to see with our own eyes how they're performing.
Sure. I had a good friend of mine in South Florida, where I'm from, and he was always into sports cars. And the first thing he would do when he bought a new car is he would wait for it to rain, and he'd find an empty parking lot. He would do donuts. He would figure out everything that car was possible of doing in its breaking point. That way, if anything ever did happen, he would know how to properly correct it.
Yeah.
So having the driving experience does help, because you're not talking about just a normal drive. You're talking about reacting when something happens. And if you overreact, sometimes you cause more problems than underreacting. So that's awesome. I want to go back to the age requirement. You had mentioned 21. Did you know that Hamblen County lowered their age to 18 just to be able to fill positions?
Oh, in the jail?
In the jail?
No, we do. In our jail, we do have
18?
Yes.
And how do you feel about their experience in life as far as being able to come on in and be a jailer at that age?
You have to be kind of selective. I mean, the people that you're bringing in. I mean, and by interviewing them and just talking to them, it's funny. I was a part of an interview process this past week where we had a 19-year-old kid come in and about a 24-year-old kid come in. The 24-year-old, I mean, it's just no comparison between the maturity level of these two young men. The 19-year-old was head and shoulders more mature than this other kid. And it surprised me. I mean, he was impressive. And when you get kids like that's come through a strong family structure, discipline, I mean, you got some of those that come in here and they excel here. And then you have some that don't. I mean, you may misjudge them, or they may show you signs that they get in here. I mean, but for this job, I mean, you can bring a 28-year-old in here and say, hey, this is what you want to do. And then, a week later they call in and say, hey, I ain't coming back. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. And then you have some 18, 19-year-olds accept the challenge and go, hey, but if you try to instill the proper training in them, but still, I mean, it's about the maturity level. You try to do that because, the state says they can come in at that age. And but a lot of it is the training that you try to instill in them. And I mean, but all the way around, I mean, you look at all the, you talk to other sheriffs, and I mean, it's a challenge because the pay ain't great.
That was my next question. What is the starting pay?
Yeah, our starting pay here is 27.
Okay, so it's I believe a little bit more than Hamblen County.
I mean, it's 27. That's what you start out is, if I remember correctly. But you start out at 27, and I mean, it's, but it's the things, the stress that you go through. I mean, I can sit here and talk about that we've got mental health issues in our jail. They have to live it. They're back there every day with these people, and I've got countless, investigations since I've been on to where they're back there talking to somebody and he just punches a guard. I mean, no reason. I mean, it's a tough job. I mean, I done it in Granger County. I mean, it was an overcrowded facility. It was an old top of the jail. I think it had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 beds, and we'd have 30-something people in there, and I mean, just crowded in. And I mean, you have issues back there, and I mean, it's like, holy cow. I mean, it's just tough because I mean, some of those people, I mean, they don't care.
No.
And I mean, it makes for a tough job, and I wish we was in a position to where we could accommodate those people more and give them more money, and I want to work on that at some point to try to raise that up a little bit because I mean they're well deserving of it.
I agree. I agree. They're dealing with a lot of stuff. Part of your interview process, do you walk these candidates through your facility prior to?
The chief and captain will do the interviews, and once they get done with the interview, if they're a prospect to be hired, and they'll walk them through and say, "Well, look at our facility. Let me show you."
Okay.
We pride ourselves on our facility. I mean, it's from COVID. I mean, it's we were able to move prisoners around. We've repainted the whole thing. It looks like a new place. Okay. So we put a lot of work into it. Well, the inmates did, but I mean the place is.
Well, that's their home, so I mean they would take care of their own home. Do you find like a lot of damage happening from inmates? Anything in particular that they try to break or do?
I mean, well, that's a constant in a jail setting. I mean, you're gonna have those that get mad and they're gonna try to bust a light out, or they're gonna try to bust a sprinkler head off, or they're gonna clog a toilet up. I mean that's common. We took a stance on that when they started doing this. We started charging them. We charged them with vandalism. Every how much if there was damage done, then we went into the court and asked them to. We want restitution for that.
You've brought up some good points about the sprinkler systems for the fire, plugging the toilets. Hamblen County wants to build a multi-story facility, and citizens have raised concerns about flooding and so on and so forth and how to deal with that, and we haven't really got any answers on that, but I'm glad you did bring that up. So as you weren't here when this facility was built,
right?
So as the sheriff, are you happy with the layout of the jail? Is there anything that you would have done differently throughout the process of building it if you could rebuild the facility?
I think that the people have done an outstanding job. I mean, I'm real pleased with it. I mean, it's kind of simple once you get to know the layout. I mean, I think the only thing that I might have done differently, and it's just going by, and this was later on when I went to a different facility. Some of the newer facilities since then has got this, but our main control room back in Mail, when I was telling you had access to all 4, they're in a tower setting to where you're actually up and you're looking. Here it's kind of, you're up maybe 2 feet is where that's set up, and you still got the visual, but up there in the one I was in, you went upstairs and you're in the main control room and you've got all the controls and you're just sitting there in a chair swiveling and you can see everything below you. And that would be the only thing that I would see in this whole thing that I thought I'd like to have that for our people to be able to sit there and just look down and just be able to sit there and just constantly. I mean, instead of here, it's kind of almost eye level, but that's the only thing that I can see. The tower setting, I was just really impressed with it.
And what local jail was that, or what facility was that at, that you went and saw that?
Um, uh, well, Blount County has them, but I saw this in Claiborne County.
Claiborne County. Okay.
And they've got a new facility. It's been built since this one. And this, you walk up there and you see everything. I mean, it's just really nice.
Have you ever visited the Coffey County facility?
I know it's a new facility, and I know that sheriff came in. He come in when I came in. He was elected at the same time. But no, I've never been to it.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the bail amounts, because you did mention about public intoxication. Do you know what the bail amounts are for disorderly conduct in public intoxication?
Public intoxication is a $310 cash bond, which if you pay, that's pretty much, you don't have to return back to court. You're done. Or a $1,500 security bond, and then disorderly conduct is a $1,500 bond.
Okay.
There's no cash bond on it. It's a $1,500 bond. But public intoxication is $310, which is all those are set by the court.
All right. Are you aware that the facility that the Hamblen County wants to build, that sheriff is against the layout of that? Are you familiar with that? Do you talk to?
I don't talk to ESCO that much. I just know, I guess by word of mouth and everything else, that he's not. I don't think he likes the layout of it. But as far as sitting down with him and saying, hey, this is what I don't like about it. From the only thing that I've heard about it is that it is going to be a
story facility.
Yeah, it's going to go up instead of out. And I mean, I don't know what his concerns are about it, but I mean, I would, if I was the sheriff, I would have some. I mean, just by some of the simple things. I mean, flooding. Is that something that's going to be, is that something they can assure us it's going to be able to be controlled on the floor? Or is it going to come down to the next block and cause damage? And all of it to me would be a safety concern, and then fire. I mean, when you go up, I mean, you've got 80 people to the floor or 100 people to the floor. You're responsible for them people. So, I mean, the fires, and a lot of that's on manpower too. I mean, how much manpower are you going to have to be able to manage that? I mean, it's going to be, here, I mean, we can put them out into certain areas that we know that we can hold them there, that we can bring them out of that access point into another area. And it's all, same level. But that would be my concerns of a multi-jail would be. And you're going to have those instances where you have, an inmate's going to get access to something and set something on fire. But, being realistically, I mean, it's a lot of concrete and steel in there. There ain't a lot of product to burn, but I mean, they can pile some stuff up, and then it's the point of just smoke. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know how their layout is, but I mean, if I was a sheriff, I mean, that would be a concern for mine if it was multi-level, because I can assure you, they're going to flood it.
You guys hear that, right? Coming right out of Sheriff's mouth from Jefferson County. He's got experience. He's been around. Okay, this is the same thing that the people have been trying to portray to the commissioners and the mayor, and they're not going for it. So flooding is definitely a big issue on multi-story facilities. And that's easily accomplished if the inmates are willing to do that. If somebody floods the floor, how long do you guys keep the water off before you turn it back on for the inmates?
Well, until you can get repairs made. I mean, it depends on what, how much destruction's been there. To us, I mean, it's nothing but, squeegees in the drain. I mean, it goes out into the concrete, squidgy it out, and squidgy it out to another area and out to the drain. I mean, if you have here, but I mean, everything in here can be done remotely. I mean, we can sit there and if we got an issue and we see water coming out of a certain cell and our correctional officer is standing there, he can say, Charlie 137, shut the water off, and he can do this by push a button. He can shut the water off to that cell. So, I mean, a lot of times you can stop those things, quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's sometimes that, it can get out of hand. I don't know what the layout of what kind of system they're doing. Imagine if they're doing, like our cells are individual blocks that were set in.
That's what they want to do. Yep.
Yeah, they set those in. Now, when you start doing the water there, I mean, it's going to be kind of contained in those areas. So, I mean, once it goes out, I don't know how the layout of what they do, if they got drain systems on every floor. I'd imagine if they're building the gym, that would be something they're going. If somebody's flooding the third floor, that water could drain. You would think it would drain off that, and then it would drain to the outside of the building or whatever. But I mean, that's a guarantee. I mean, that's something you deal with quite often in jails, because you make somebody mad, or he gets, he ain't able to use the phone when he wants to, and then next thing you know, he's clogged up the toilet, and here comes the water rolling out. So, yep. I mean, it's common.
And it's not hard to plug up a drain that's on the floor that's supposed to allow water to go in there, And I don't think a deputy's going to stand there with a bunch of inmates around them, making sure nobody puts nothing over it there. So their layout would be like 180-degree view from the control center. So instead of like what you have and what Sheriff Esco would like, the wagon wheel, so that you have 360-degree inmates, which utilizes half of the amount of employees, because instead of multi-story, you have them doing double the amount of inmates. So their facility is only half accommodating of what would be if it was the same type of facility as what you've got. So I'm glad that, I didn't know what kind of facility you ran, but I'm glad that's what you all have, because that's truly what we need, because we can't even fill the positions and the deputies that we have now. There's no way we're going to get 3 times the amount of deputies to come over there, especially when the pay for those deputies is lower than the surrounding counties. That has a big effect. And we've brought that up as well at the meetings. Is there anything that you would like to say about the new jail justice center? Do you think a size facility of that nature, 600 beds plus, is needed for Hamblen County? Or do you think that's a little extravagant?
No, if I was going to build one, I'd probably even build one bigger, just for simple to have empty space. I think Anderson County built one and had a lot of empty space in it. They didn't fill up because, I mean, at that time they was able to do it, but golly, I can imagine what costs will be, years down the road, because it ain't going to get any cheaper. If I could build one and have empty space in it, I'd prefer to have that. Then when it come there, come time, I would say, we're good. This is going to last us, because I don't know how much that project is that they're planning on building. I mean,
they're talking anywhere between 65 million and 75 million, and that was their projections a few years back. Everybody knows that with this COVID, the price of materials has skyrocketed. So we don't even know what the bids are going to come in at. They're just now starting to take those bids.
Bids for that.
So, we'll have to see what does come out to that. So, a bigger facility would be, in your opinion, the way to go if it could be manned. Right, you have to have the labor in order to suffice the area. If you can't get the labor in there, then the area is just something to talk about and something to look at. All right. Is there anything that you would like to say to the citizens of Jefferson County since you have this opportunity?
No, I'm just honored to serve you. I just wanted to let everybody know that, the people of this county that we, our focus remains the same. When our feet hits the floor is to keep you all safe, the 55,000 plus that live here. And, we've tried things that, it hasn't been successful, and we've stopped back and we've started doing other things that we thought we might work. But we've tried several different things. We've been successful in some, some we haven't, but we're always trying to try something new, or looking at something new, or looking at what other people do. And just beyond just coming in, but looking at the future. One of the things that just really concerned me just in the last week that I was able to look at was when you was talking about prices going up. They were talking about sheet metal, and I was talking to somebody who was talking about a garage door. He had just had it installed a few months ago. Well, it cost this set amount. Well, it's about $600 higher today than it was then. And the guy was telling him, he said, metal is going, he said, it's going outrageous. And he said, then I started researching for myself, and, they're projecting scrap metal and all that to start going back to stages that was seen several years ago, to where we had everybody. If they're going to get the right dollar amount, they see a piece of metal laying somewhere, or something, they're going to grab it out of your yard, and you were seeing thefts everywhere.
Yep.
It was outrageous. I was working as a trooper then, and, we were stopping people. Where did you get this riding lawnmower at? you got it, and it's a small one. It's stuck in the trunk of your car. Where did this thing come from? Those certain things. And my fear is we're going to go back to if people need money for drugs, they're going to go scrapping. They're going to be grabbing stuff and turning it in down there, and then we're going to go right back to that mode where your detectives are going to be going down there and saying, "What did you have brought in today?" We've had this taken and this taken, and it's, but I see it. That's the projection. That's where we're headed, and I'm like, well, wow. It's just repeating itself.
Some of those guys that do it, they're courageous. I've heard of utility lines, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet of utility lines being cut down and dragged out. So they're brazen, and when the money is there,
they're going to do it.
That's what they're going to do.
Bottom line, that's all it's about. But we're looking at stuff like that to know what's our future going to hold, for us. But we're, like I said, it's an honor to serve as a sheriff. We're still doing what we can, and we're taking an aggressive stance on the drug trade in this county. And and to be honest with you, it takes us outside the county sometimes, because that's all connected.
Sure.
They don't have boundaries.
No.
And we're working hard every day, and that's going to be our goal, to try to keep everybody in this county safe. And I'm proud of the men and women that work here, that try every day, that go out and put their lives on the line. And it's just an honor.
Hey, and I appreciate your professionalism the other day when we first met at the landfill.
Yes.
You were professional. You held up the law. You didn't try to violate any kind of rights or force policy or feelings. And that's definitely what we need out of a sheriff, and hopefully that trickles on down to everybody else. Well, that's all I have. You had mentioned something about showing us a tour. If you can do that, I'll go ahead and I'll stop this, and we'll start up another one whenever we get to where we're going.
Yes.
All right, guys. So like this, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to call the Sheriff's Department, speak directly. If you live in Jefferson County, he would love to probably hear from you. Any suggestions that you have, or anybody that you know that needs to maybe be called in on, they have a lot of good resources. So check out part 2 of this, and we're out of here.